Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Little Rock Board of Directors meeting of September 20th, 2016. I'd like to welcome everyone that's in attendance with us this evening as we go about the city's business. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read the roll.
Director Hendricks, Director Richardson, Director Webb, Director Gazort, Director Wright, Director Wyrick, Director CONCOURSE, Director Fortson, Director Adcock, Vice Mayor Hines, Mayor Stodler.
Here. Let me call on City Director Brad Gazort for our invocation, please. Brad?
Would you all bow with me, please? Heavenly Father, thank you for all of the continuing blessings you've bestowed upon this city. We ask for your ongoing guidance and providence for all of those who are in the city, whether as visitors or residents. Please keep watch over all who serve us in the city, state, and nation, whether in uniform or not. Bring them home safely to their families at the conclusion of their duties. Be with us tonight as we discuss the issues of our city, and keep us mindful that our actions are to be for your glory and not for our own. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. If you would, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have some presentations to attend to before we get into the regular agenda. And so the first one has to do with a very special event that's began today with the Golden Eagle Budweiser Clydesdales. And I'd like to call on, I believe, City Director Dean CONCOURSE for this presentation. Dean?
Horse up here. Did you bring a horse up here?
I said, where's the horse? And where's the Budweiser?
That would have been fun.
Well, this is a great honor to recognize and thank a great family in our city. Many people do many things that help make this a great place, and quiet philanthropy would characterize the Vogel family. I've known Robert all my life. We went to Forest Park together, where we were on the basketball team together, and Robert was the smart one. Three of us would get the rebounds, and he'd run down the court and score all the points. Then at Forest Heights, and then at Hall High School. And Robert and his family have done multiple things for this city through the years that no one ever knows about. Starting at St. Vincent's, where they've had a radiology technician scholarship in honor of his dad for, 40 years? To juvenile diabetes, to multiple other things. And there are very few times that there's not an event in Little Rock that Robbie or Robert's not called and said, will you help us with some aspect of it? And that doesn't preclude me, who said, we need some help in Riverfront Park. Could you help me a little bit with a sculpture garden that's now named after the Vogel family? They are receiving an award from Anheuser-Busch called the Ambassador Excellence Design, and there are probably over 700 distributors in the United States of Anheuser-Busch products, and very few of them are recognized with this award. And what goes along with it is bringing the Clydesdales to Little Rock for a week. And this is at no small expense, again, to this distributorship in the Vogel family. And it should be a very great event for our community, getting people downtown, getting to see these magnificent animals, and it's because of the wonderful philanthropy of this family that is being taken place. but more importantly, because they're a great corporate citizen for our community and are being recognized by their parent company for all the good things they do. So, Robbie and Robert Vogel. Plaque from the city, from the mayor. If y'all would like to say something, we'd love to hear it.
On behalf of our family, I just want to say thank you, and we're so glad that it's an opportunity we get to have for the city. It's, I think, doing its intended purpose and drawing people down to the wonderful park that's at Riverfront, and look forward to having many events throughout the week. Hope you can see him Friday night on President Clinton Avenue or Saturday at the Food Truck Festival. It should be a great time and memorable. So thank you, Dean. We appreciate it very much. Thank you, Mayor.
I might just add that my family's been here over 100 years, and Little Rock Special, we are very lucky to be successful and have a great company, to have a great friend like Dean and many of the directors that I've had the pleasure of, working with and being part of the real estate development and other aspects of the city. But as I spent Saturday afternoon with Dean looking over our sculpture garden that we are in the process of expanding, thanks to Dean's efforts and everybody else's, and we're making a considerable contribution. And looking how that was going to continue, I was just grateful and appreciative of the vision that you have had to bring the river market to the level that it is, because being a corporate citizen, if Little Rock grows, we grow. And it's very critical that we make good decisions, and, by your, guidance, and if we get Little Rock moving forward, then that's the reward that we'll be able to continue to do. So it is very important, and I'm just, like I said, we're very honored as a family to be able to contribute to the river market, and a great vision, and something we all should be very proud of. I even have people coming in from out of town to come to the Clinton Library and come to the river market this weekend. So it's not taken lightly. People know about it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Robert, and thank you, Robbie. The city is really built by the strength of its community and its neighbors and its families, and we certainly appreciate all of the contributions that you've made. It's a real partnership, and when we have individuals that understand how that partnership works, and we can move forward and make the kind of progress that we've had, whether it be in the river market or other parts of the city, certainly the park, it just really is gratifying to know that your heart and a lot of your resources are here contributing to the city and for the betterment of the city. So thank you so much to you and to the Vogel family.
Thank you very much. Come see the Clydesdale.
I got my picture taken today with Cash, one of the horses that apparently is on the cover.
Better than a lot of people.
Yeah, they really are treated pretty well. Okay. The next presentation is going to be a presentation from the Bill and Hillary Clinton National Airport. Let me call on Virgil Young, the chairman, Virgil Miller, the chairman, for his introduction of the director.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Stola, Vice Mayor Hines, members of the City Board. Again, my name is Virgil Miller. I'm have the honor this year of serving as the chair of the Little Rock Municipal Airport Commission. With me today, or this evening, is our Executive Director, Mr. Ron Matthew, and Shane Carter, our Public Relations and Governmental Affairs Director. I don't believe I have any other commissioners here today. Before I go into the presentation, I'd just like to acknowledge City Manager Bruce Moore and his team for putting us on the agenda and giving us time to make a presentation before you. As you know, as a member of the city and as a municipal commission, we think it's important that we come before you from time to time, tell you what's going on at the airport, at your airport. And so we have been given a few minutes to come before you and share some very exciting things that's going on at the airport. Thank you for this time. As you may be aware of, Little Rock is now the newest home of Envoy and their newest maintenance base. An announcement was made last week. As you can see by the pictures there, The Governor Asa Hutchinson, made the announcement. We thought that was extremely important because we received $500,000 from the Governor's Action Fund to make this all happen. The mayor was there, made remarks, as well as members from the Greater Little Rock Chamber of Commerce, Arkansas Economic Development Commission, and members of Envoy. Envoy is, again, a subsidiary of American Airlines. This facility is going to be a maintenance area for the Embracer 175, newest airline in the Envoy fleet. They will be leasing over 47,000 square feet of the old Hawker Beechcraft. As you may recall, that hangar sat empty. We were squeezing as much money out of it as we can by various means, but now we have a steady income source. We will be using that, again, to help the economic activity here in this area. We anticipate that there will be 60 new jobs created there. One of the things that we stay extremely mindful of is how's the public receiving us? What do they think about the airport? You may recall several years ago there was an article in a leisure travel magazine that talked about Little Rock, gave us some very negative reports, notwithstanding the fact that we were in the midst of doing upgrades to our ticketing area. This report came out. And of course, it was a big concern that we had, not only as members of the commission, but certainly the general public and our staff, and we wanted to do something about it. As you recall, we came before the city board, and we talked about that, and we brought in the company that we'd hired to do surveys to talk about and get a gauge from our flying public about what we're doing. As you can see, these are results from the latest quarter that we had. The overall satisfaction rating for the Little Rock Municipal Airport is at 98%. You'll see that compared to the national benchmarks, and you see each category there. We're in the high 90s just about on every one of those categories. Of course, when you look at food and beverage, that's at 85%, still ahead of the national benchmark. I don't know how many people really like food and beverage at the airport. But again, that's higher than the national. And then retail, that's at 80%. But again, that is higher than the national benchmark. So we are steady trying to improve the facilities there at the airport. And we do that by surveying the flying public, asking them what they like, what they don't like, and trying to make improvements from that. The next thing that we're extremely proud of is that we are a net tax generator. That is to say that we pay taxes, and the funds that we receive from the terminal operations, that is rental car, terminal concessions, those type things, notwithstanding our lease income, that's not included here, but we generate right at $6 million of taxes back to the city. And you can see how that's breaking down for the county and also the state. That's something that we're very proud of that we do. One of the other things that we're very proud of is that there are only, of 8 of the top 130 airports, we're one that's debt-free. You'll see that asterisk by Salt Lake City International. They're getting ready to issue bonds for a new construction contract, and when they do that and incur that debt, the Little Rock Municipal Airport will be the airport with the highest number of enplanements that is totally debt-free. As a banker, I don't like debt-free, but again, that's something that we're proud of, and we're going to do something about that. We're getting ready to put that money to work. As you can see, we have some renderings there of our concourse renovation. That's looking south, going toward baggage claim. We have another image. That is north in that rotunda area. You can see we envision the improvements are going to be there, something we're quite proud of. The concourse renovation is going to total over $20 million. It's not going to require any debt. We're going to pay for that as we go along because we have the cash to do it. Renovation is going to consist of not only the modernization of our concourse, but new gate seating, seats that will have charging stations at each seat, something that everybody's going to be happy with. The enhanced technologies for our Wi-Fi capabilities, additional restrooms, jet bridges, new signage, something that we're quite proud of. As a matter of fact, nearly $90 million have been invested in the facility upgrades since 2010. Not only are we looking at doing improvements at the terminal, we're looking at airfield improvements. New center line lead lighting on 4 right, 22 left, our east commercial runway, $2 million there. Taxiway improvements, over $20 million there. A 15-year airfield improvement that will total $118 million. We will be putting together a new master plan to create a 20-year vision for the development of the airport. We want to identify what needs to be done. Of course, when you wait for something and there is demand there, we've waited too long. We need to get out in front of this. So we will be putting together this new comprehensive plan. We anticipate it's going to take about 16 months to complete. It will involve stakeholders from all over the community in helping with this. We think that's extremely important. What we want to do also is maybe address some concerns that you may have, the questions that always come up. One of the first things that comes up is, how come we lost this direct flight? How come we don't have this flight? How can we get more air service development? One of the things that I think is important to do is that we need to give you some state of the industry so you can find out, get some idea of what's going on in the overall industry. And so for that presentation, I've asked Ron Matthew to come forward just to share with you for a few minutes about the state of the industry, of the airline industry. So, Mr. Matthew.
Thank you, Virgil.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. What we'd like to do is just go through quickly and talk about where we are and then relate that to where the rest of the industry is. And you'll see we're actually in a pretty good position. If you look at our employments going back from 2000 through 2015, what you'll see is a decrease of about 22% of departing passengers. But when you look at the next slide and you look at what's been happening across the nation from 2001 to 2015, flights overall are down 23%, seats overall are down 12%, and city pairs, flights between two cities, they're down 2%. And one of the reasons why that is, if you look at the next slide, is we have 17 fewer hubs in the nation than we had in 2000 timeframe. So you have fewer flights and you have fewer options because you have fewer hubs. And the reason why you have fewer hubs, if you look at the next slide, is because you have fewer airlines. If you look at what's on the top, you have 33 overall airlines that have been consolidated down to 4. And so we thought it'd be helpful to show how these airlines have consolidated and what the top 4 are. In addition to that, down below, there are 10 airlines that are no longer in business. The good news for us, if you go to the next slide, is we are fortunate enough to have all 4 of the legacy carriers out here. In addition to that, we have Allegiant Airlines, and we also have Glow Airlines. Allegiant is a low-cost carrier, and Glow is a new carrier that's in operation, flying from from Little Rock to New Orleans, and also to Destin, Florida. And we're looking at future flights from both Glow and Allegiant. I neglected to mention, my apologies on the previous slide, those 4 airlines control over 83% of all the domestic flights in the United States. So while there are other carriers, these 4 control 83% of all the domestic flights in the United States. So what we're experiencing is a phenomena that many, many airports are experiencing. Certainly if you were a hub and you were dehubbed, you're experiencing it a whole lot more if you're one of the 17. So having said all that, we are still in a very good position. Our employments are actually up so far this year. We're up 0.5%. Our passengers are happy with our facility, and we intend to continue to do whatever we can to improve the facility and make sure that our customers are happy with our facility. And we'll be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Ron, and thank you, Virgil. And there may be a couple of questions, so let's see here. Director Richardson, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Ron, Virgil, thank you for a wonderful presentation. Ron, thank you for the great work you continue to do out there. We're certainly lucky and appreciative to have you on board. Two quick questions. One, you made reference to the decrease in flights from 2001 to 2015 to fewer hubs and fewer airlines. Does fears of terrorism play into that at all?
That's always a concern, especially in the post-9/11 era. But I think that people have largely gotten back to doing business. You know, if we go back to, Shane, would you go back to the slide that had our employments on it? I think the numbers bear that out, because look what happened. You look at the 2001 timeframe, and then we decreased, and then we came back. We came back in 2007 near to where we were in 2000 prior to that. And then in 2008, when we start to get into the recession, that's when you saw some of the decrease. The industry has also changed in that Southwest is now flying out of Memphis, and so all that traffic we used to get from Memphis to come here to catch Southwest now can stay in the Memphis area. So the rules on the grounds have kind of changed. I think that terrorism is always on everyone's mind, but I don't necessarily think that that's what's impacting our employments. I think the overall concerns in the industries are.
Great. Second question. Virgil, you made reference to the 60 new jobs out there. What's the estimated or guesstimated economic impact it's going to have here in our community?
Well, that's a good question. I can tell you overall, the airport generates economic impact of over $1 billion.
Sure.
So with 60 new jobs, paying anywhere from, I don't know, $17 to $40 an hour, high-skilled maintenance personnel, we think it's going to be quite impactful. And of course, at the announcement, they shared with us that that hangar will be able to house 4 of these E-175s. And so by us making that investment and then getting them used to coming here with this new facility and being so centrally located where they're staffed here and then they can be able to go out to different areas, it's going to be a great economic impact for us.
Great. And your answer just caused me to come up with another question. Do we have the workforce with the necessary skill set to fill those positions, or are we going to have any specialized training to get prepared to fill those positions?
Well, I think one of the things that is great about being here in Little Rock is the Little Rock Air Force Base and the skills of employees that they have there. And so I'm sure Envoy will be looking at that as a place to maybe try to recruit personnel, and then, of course, Pulaski Tech will probably try to take advantage of, providing those type of courses for employees. So I'm sure Envoy is going to come in with some people, but they're going to look to this community to fill those jobs.
Well, that's going to be my next question. Do you think that the lion's share, and you may not be able to answer this, the lion's share of those jobs are going to be filled by City of Little Rock residents?
Well, that's extremely important to us. We are a Little Rock commission.
Certainly.
Overseen by Little Rock residents. One of the first things that we think about is how can this help Little Rock and the greater Little Rock area. And so it will certainly be our intent and directive to try to fill those jobs with personnel from the workforce right here in this community.
Finally, thank you for your service on the commission and the wonderful work you're doing out there. And Ron, once again, Thank you for the great work you're doing out there, and we're very fortunate and lucky to have you here in our city. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Director Kazor, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Virgil, Ron, thank you. And Ron, you and I have talked about this before, and I've asked you this question. I'm going to let you answer it again for the public. And I understand that we're not in as bad a position in terms of air service as a lot of cities. But the two complaints I hear most often about the service we don't have is we can't fly southeast on Southwest, and you can't fly west on Delta. So if you want to go southeast on Southwest, you've got to go through St. Louis, and Delta has a hub in Salt Lake City, and you can't get there. What are we working? Are we talking to airlines? What can we do to try and at least add those two areas of service that a lot of people are asking for?
We're constantly talking to the airlines about that, and we've, like you said, we've had this discussion many times. We have talked to Delta about Salt Lake. It's been something that they've looked at and agreed to look at, but at the end of the day, one of the things that I think everyone needs to understand, passengers create more flights. Adding flights in and of themselves won't create the passengers. And so we are concerned about convincing an airline to add a flight that's not successful. However, since we are seeing an uptick in our employments, and we had been up almost 2%, except for last month where we saw a little bit of a negative increase. So we're up about 0.5%. The airlines see that. With the maintenance base and other activities coming here, they see that because they're good jobs. Above a certain salary level, they have all these statistics about who flies and who doesn't fly. So I think we're going to get there as we all grow together. We were very close to adding the Salt Lake about a year or so ago, and so we're going to continue to have those discussions. And stay tuned. We may be able to make an announcement before the end of the year about something in the Northeast. That's all I can say.
That would
right
be
now.
excellent. I said those are the two routes that I get questioned about the most. So thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
And let me add, I forgot to mention that after the commission meeting in October, we're going to have an industry update. We're going to invite the public. Certainly, you will receive invitations to that. We will also have Allegiant Airline. They will be there to make a presentation about why they chose to come to Little Rock. And that will give us some understanding about at least how that airline thinks about Little Rock, and give the general public some idea about how airlines price and how they decide to select cities. So it's a destination. So I think that will be extremely informative and educational, and we will send invitations out to you and to the members of the public to attend that.
Well, very good. Thank you, Virgil. Thank you, Ron. And that's very important information to provide to the public, and that's why we wanted to have you come by and give us a little update. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
You bet.
All right.
The next item is a proclamation which I would like to read and present. I'm going to go to the podium and turn this over to our Vice Mayor for a moment. Members, as you know, our city continues to grow in many, many ways. And we look at those numbers and reflect on the positive nature of that relative to the diverse complexion of our city. As many of you know, we're a minority-majority city in the sense that we're 48% Caucasian and 42.5% African-American, about 7.5% Hispanic, and about 3.5% Asian. And in light of that, this is an important week nationally as it relates to these issues. And I would like to issue this proclamation that reads as follows: Know ye all people by these presents greetings. Whereas our community's success depends on making sure that all Little Rock citizens feel welcome here. Today, the citizens of Little Rock are a vital part of our community, bringing fresh perspective and new ideas, starting businesses and contributing to the vibrant diversity that we all value. And whereas this week we honor the spirit of unity that is bringing neighbors together across Arkansas, during National Welcoming Week. As mayor, I invite all Arkansans to join this movement of communities nationwide by renewing our commitment to the core American values and by taking action in the spirit of welcoming. By working together, we can achieve greater prosperity and make our community the kind of place where diverse people from all around the world feel valued and want to put down roots. And whereas, regardless of where we were born or what we look like, we are citizens of Little Rock, united in our efforts to build a stronger community. And by recognizing the contributions that we all make to creating a vibrant culture and a growing economy, we make our community more prosperous and more inclusive to all who call it home. Whereas, as mayor, I urge us to come together to build communities where every resident has the opportunity to contribute at his or her best by coming together to create more prosperous communities and to reaffirm that Little Rock stands as a beacon of freedom and opportunity. Now, therefore, I, Mark Stodola, the mayor of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, do hereby proclaim September 16th through the 25th, 2016 as Welcoming Week here in the city of Little Rock. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and seal on this 25th day of Little Rock 2016. I'd like to present this proclamation to the Consul General of our Mexican Consulate, who is with us today. He is a new arrival, Consul General Rodolfo Arenas. Consul General, if you'd come forward, please. And also on behalf of the Arkansas United Community Coalition, who are a part and parcel to the Welcoming Week activities nationwide. Consul General Rodolfo, we are pleased to have you here. He comes from Brownsville, Texas, by way of Brownsville anyway, and has made a strong name for himself already in our community in terms of helping our immigrants from the country of Mexico. So, Consul General, I'd like to present this to you and offer you an opportunity to say anything you would like to our city board.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, I'm very honored to be here. This is the first time I'm here before all of you. And I highly appreciate this proclamation made by the mayor and all the city officers. I just want to tell you that the Mexican consulate is working very hard in order to be a stockholder with all of you in all the problems you are facing. We are part of the solutions, the Mexican government, the Mexicans who are living here, and we want to be involved in all the good things that are happening here. Just for your knowledge, because there is a lot of public here, the first time I had the opportunity to be with Mark Stodola and with this lady, Joan Hadcock, in the Baseline Street, I was aware about this particular ID you are trying to establish to all the people who live here, irrespective of the legal migration status. And as I told you before, this is a wonderful step that not many cities in America has been doing. And when I said that to Mexico, to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and also to the Mexican Embassy, they said, Rodolfo Quilantan, you need to work very close with the city of Little Rock in order that we can work together as a solution and not as a problem. And I remember that I offered you, Mayor Stodola, the know-how about the Mexicans ID we provide to all the Mexican community. And let me tell you, these kind of IDs are very secure, and they have been recognized by many states and also by the federal government in the cases particularly of the executive actions proclaimed on July 2012 about DACA, the deferral actions for children's arrival. So again, here before all of you, the Mexican government, the Mexican consulate here in Little Rock wants to work with you, and please give us the opportunity to be members of the community and work very strong with all of you. And thank you very much for this proclamation.
Thank you, Consul
Thank you.
General. And would you like to introduce the people that are with you, please?
Well, this is Leticia Reta. She is from, what's the name of the organization? AA.
Arkansas United Community Coalition.
And also this wonderful lady, your name? You want to say some words, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the board directors. And we appreciate the welcoming. The Little Rock is one of the 9 cities across the Arkansas that is welcoming immigrants and appreciate the effort that the immigrants are making to this state in the economy and the cultural and the social. And we're tying bonds of friendship, and we'd like to thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for being here. And Council General, we look forward to working with you for many more years with your assignment here in Little Rock.
Thank you very much. Gracias a todos ustedes. Muchas gracias.
I'd like to let the city board know that the city received another recognition earlier today from the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance, and I'm holding up for you a plaque that's got a fork on it, which indicates that the city of Little Rock received the 2016 Acting Out Against Hunger Award for our work on a mobile food market, the wonderful bus that you've seen. And let me call on City Director Kathy Webb for an elaboration of this. Actually, Kathy is the director of the Hunger Relief Alliance and made the presentation earlier this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And of course, for those of you who heard the mayor in his State of the City address earlier, I guess it was this year, the mayor
March.
talked about this as a vision and something that a few other cities around the country have done, where there are huge areas of food insecurity and places where there are food deserts, which means there are no grocery stores where people are able to go to get fresh fruits and vegetables. This was a collaborative effort, many partners, and James Jones and City Manager Bruce Moore were instrumental in helping with the operational details of getting this launched. And Hunger Relief Alliance wanted to recognize the efforts that the city put into this project. It's already making a difference in the lives of our citizens.
Thank you, Kathy. And Kathy mentioned to me earlier that once this hit social media, that she's gotten several calls from other cities that are interested in starting this up. So it's a great thing. I hope you see the bus. It's been wrapped in colorful produce of every which kind you can imagine, between bananas and lettuce and broccoli, and I'm not sure whatever else is on it. But you'll see it coming, and it's a great thing to bring into our neighborhoods. And we've been doing this now for, I guess, about a month, and every week we have more and more people who are taking advantage of it. So I want to say it's been a real community effort. There's been a great collaboration. We've had some good foundation partners that have helped contribute to it, and it's really gratifying to see the city of Little Rock moving in this direction on this type of very important need for our family and for our children. Yes, go ahead, Director Richardson.
Thank you, Mayor. I certainly want to thank Director Webb and her organization for making this bus available in certain parts of our community that are classified as food deserts, and that have these fruits and vegetables in areas of our community where people don't have the opportunity to get affordable, healthy fruits and vegetables. And I certainly want to thank you for your strategic plan in terms of deliberately targeting certain areas of our community. I want to just give you my personal thanks.
Okay, thank you. Finally, I've handed out to the board members a new book called 100 Things to Do in Little Rock Before You Die. And I've been told that you should only get to 99. You get what I mean. But most importantly, this is a book that was written by a native of Little Rock, Celia Anderson, who works for the Little Rock Convention and Visitors Bureau, and has compiled this book and had it published. And it's been on a top 10 list. It's something that you're going to be able to acquire in the bookstores. And I thought that certainly the board of directors needed to see how many of these things they have already accomplished and how many more they got to put on their list. But Celia wanted to make sure that the board members had a copy of this, and she's a great ambassador for the city, a great salesperson. She's on the sales force for the Little Rock Convention and Visitors Bureau, and I'm sure that as she promotes the city, she uses this book. Hopefully, she doesn't talk about people dying, when they come here. But at least knowing that there's a tremendous amount of activities and things very wonderful about our city that are referenced in this book. So, Celia, thank you, and I hope board members you'll take advantage of some of the things that you haven't yet done. Okay, that completes our presentations, and so we can now move on to the items on our agenda. We have 7 items on our consent agenda. Madam Clerk, if you would please read the consent agenda.
The consent agenda consists of a motion to approve the minutes of the February 16th, 2016 and March 1st, 2016 Little Rock City Board of Directors meetings, a resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Oakley Fertilizer Incorporated for the purchase of treated rock salt in bulk for the Public Works Department Operations Division and for the purposes, a resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Gene Summers Construction Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $194,941.20 for the Ledgelawn Drive Drainage Rehabilitation Project and for the purposes funding from the 2012 3/8 capital improvement sales tax and the 2013 limited tax general obligation capital improvement bonds. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Emergency Vehicle Specialist in the amount of $78,872 for the purchase of 16 Scott Air Pack 75 units to be used by the Pulaski County Regional Hazmat Team, and for the purposes, a resolution to make appointment to the Arkansas Arts Center Board of Trustees, and for the purposes, a resolution to restate and confirm the appointment and reappointment of members of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas Heifer Project International Public Facilities Board, and for the purposes, a resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a towing service contract with each company that responded successfully to the city's request for qualifications, and for the purposes, that concludes the consent agenda.
There's a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda. Is there any discussion?
Mayor.
Go ahead, Director Richardson. You're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Bruce, on resolution number 7, I know we talked about this a while ago, and I thought we had come to a conclusion to delay this for a while. Can we list or identify the towing services that got, the companies that got recommended for funding? Or for services. Thank you, Brad. It's going to be fun.
Adams Towing, Asher Wrecker, Metro Towing, and Ralph Wrecker.
Say them again, please.
Adams Towing, Asher Wrecker, Metro Towing and Recovery, and Ralph Wrecker.
Thank you, Bruce.
Director Hendricks, you're recognized, please.
Thank you. That was a question I wanted to ask Mr. Moore also. But I wanted to also know, you mentioned last week something about a year. How long will this contract last?
They are. This is good for a year and could be renewed for additional 2 years.
So would either one of the companies need to bid? So you're eliminating the
The way this resolution reads, this is a 1-year contract, but also gives me the ability to renew for a second and a third year. Our goal ultimately would be to, as we've talked about before, is to get to a qualification system that everyone that is qualified based on the city standards would be able to be on the contract. We're not there yet. I'm not sure if we'll get there in a year, but that's our ultimate goal. But these are contracts. These are good for a full year, and if everybody meets the standards and we don't change, then they'll be renewed for a second year.
Thank you.
All right, very well. That concludes the questions. We've had the reading of the resolutions. All in favor of the passage of resolutions 1 through 7 indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. The resolutions have passed. We can now move on to the grouped ordinance items, items 8, 9, and 10. Let me ask for the first reading of these ordinances, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan residential district titled Deal Revised Short Form PDR, located at 909 Cumberland Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to condemn certain structures in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas with structural fire and health hazards, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove said structures, to declare an emergency, and for the purposes, an ordinance to amend Section 1 of Little Rock, Arkansas Ordinance Number 21,279 of August the 16th, 2016, to correct the property description for the Arkansas Children's Hospital Pediatric Clinic, short form BOD, located on the east side of the 9,000 block of Daly Drive, Little Rock, Arkansas, to declare an emergency and for the purposes first reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place these ordinances on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan residential district titled Deal Revised Short Form PDR, located at 909 Cumberland Street. An ordinance to condemn certain structures in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas with structural fire and health hazards, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove said structures, to declare an emergency. An ordinance to amend Section 1 of Little Rock, Arkansas Ordinance Number 21,279 to correct the property description for the Arkansas Children's Hospital Pediatric Clinic, short form POD, located on the east side of the 9,000 block of Daly Drive, Little Rock, Arkansas, to declare an emergency. Second reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place these ordinances on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan residential district titled Deal Revised Short Form PDR, located at 909 Cumberland Street. An ordinance to condemn certain structures in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas with structural fire and health hazards, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove said structures, to declare an emergency. An ordinance to amend Section 1 of Little Rock, Arkansas Ordinance Number 21,279 to correct the property description for the Arkansas Children's Hospital Pediatric Clinic, short form POD, located on the east side of the 9,000 block of Daly Drive, Little Rock, Arkansas, to declare an emergency. Third and final reading.
Thank you. Director Hendricks, you have a question or a comment? You're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want the audience that's present here, I hope that you took a close look at the pictures that were shown. And this is something that I talk about quite often as the director of Ward 1. I don't think that you would find any of this in the area where you live, even though I know you're here for something else. But I would suggest that if any of you have any ideas that you could share with this board and Mr. Moore to make Ward 1 as applicable as the West. Thank you.
Okay, we've had the three readings of the ordinances. All in favor of the passage of the ordinances indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The ordinances have passed. And on the emergency clause for ordinance number 9, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The emergency clause is also passed on ordinance number 9. And on the ordinance number 10, on the emergency clause, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The emergency clause on ordinance 10 has also passed. Thank you very much. Okay, we can now move on to ordinance number 11. And let me we've had one reading of this ordinance, and so is there, go ahead and let's have, is that correct, Madam Clerk?
We didn't suspend the rules, so we had one second reading.
Right.
No, it was deferred back.
It was deferred back on the second. Has it changed since it was referred back to the Planning Commission?
I thought we read it first. I thought we read it
Mr. Carpenter? I imagine it was read one time and then was referred back. Has it changed?
The ordinance hadn't changed, Mayor, that I know of. I would think it had to be read because you're not supposed to discuss it until it's been read.
I missed that.
All right, well, let's just go ahead and have three readings of it then, and we'll be safe that way, all right? If I could, let me ask for first reading of ordinance number 11.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Herrick Heights, long form PDR, located on the west side of South Bowman Road between Brody Creek subdivision and the point at Brody Creek Apartments, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for other purposes. First reading.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Herrick Heights, long form PDR, located on the west side of South Bowman Road between Brody Creek subdivision and the point at Brody Creek Apartments. Second reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Herrick Heights, long form PDR, located on the west side of South Bowman Road between Brody Creek subdivision and the point at Brody Creek Apartments. Third and final reading.
Thank you. Okay, board members, you've got obviously the staff's information in your packets that you've had, and we've got one. I think we've got for the applicant. I'm going to call on the applicant now. Is that Mr. Cox, or is it going to be Mr. Daters, or both of you? All right, if you'd come forward, please. And if you just identify yourselves.
Mayor Stola, Vice Mayor Hines, directors, staff. My name is Tim Daters. I'm a consultant engineer with White Daters and Associates. With me tonight is the owner and developer of this property, Keith Richardson, Ernie Peters with Peters Engineering, and Grant Cox with Quattlebaum Grooms Toll. If you could go back just a slide or two. There. The project that we're looking at tonight is a 73-acre mixed-use overall development plan. It's located on the west side of Bowman Road. It's north of 36th Street and south of Canis Road. And if you'll go to the next slide then, please. This shows the general location of the site. You can see it's the boundary of the, it's bounded on the east by Bowman. Shackelford Road on the east forms a quadrangle there. That's fine. Go to the next slide. This shows the general location of the multifamily component of this development. It's located approximately 700 feet from Bowman Road, 600 feet from the development to the north, and about 800 feet from the property to the west. The shaded, well, go back then, just if you'll go back one. Okay. I didn't know I knew how to do that. Thank you. The shaded area that you see at the upper right hand of this corner is the area of the multifamily development. You can see where it's located. And I apologize. Thank you, Scott. I apologize. The shaded area that you see at the upper right-hand corner is the multifamily portion of the development. You can see it sets well back from Bowman. And in the very background, you can see the adjacent residential subdivisions. You go to the next slide, please.
Pull that microphone up a little bit more
Okay,
for Mr. Daters, if you would. There.
You know, I'm pretty short. This is the overall development plan of the 74 acres. The violet or purple area that you see up on the front is the mixed-use portion of the development. That's 01 quiet office uses adjacent to Bowman Road. That's approximately 10.8 acres. The orange area, or the darker orange area, is the multifamily area. It's adjacent to the existing development. It's got an area of approximately 21.75 acres. The green areas that you see shaded are open space, buffer areas. They total about 11.75 acres. And the lighter yellow area that you see along the north is the area that's going to be single-family residential development. Next slide, please. This is the current or the future land use plan as it exists today. You can see approximately the eastern half of the property is zoned residential medium density. Typical zonings in that within that land use are MF6 to MF12. Next slide, please. With this development and the other projects that Mr. Richardson has constructed on Bowman Road, we will have approximately 1,600 feet of Bowman widened to 3-lane sections, over a quarter mile of Bowman completed to full minor arterial standards, and 800 feet of 36th Street widened to 3 lanes. With this project, the approval of this project, Mr. Richardson's total investment in street improvement costs in this vicinity will exceed $2.7 million, almost $3 million by the time we're finished. Next slide, please. This next series of slides is of the existing apartment development. I think you've seen this before, and we can just go quickly through these, Scott. That'd be fine. This is the clubhouse, the pool area. Stop slide. Prior to the Planning Commission meeting in May, Mr. Richardson met with the residents and the POA in the Brody Creek neighborhood. If you look at the plan on the right, out of those meetings, we came up with the revisions to our development proposal that we discussed at the last board meeting. Mr. Richardson agreed to a 50-foot buffer adjacent to the existing homes in Brody Creek. He agreed that in the single-family portion of the development, the area that's immediately south of Brody Creek, that the lots and homes would be developed, would be compatible with those lots and homes in Woodlands Edge and Brody Creek. He also agreed to construct either a traffic circle or a roundabout at the intersection of Brody Creek Trail and Bowman Road. And he's also agreed with the POA to other deed restrictions. This was the project that we presented to and was approved by the Planning Commission when we last met with them on May 19th. As part of this process, we went through and looked at the request from Mr. Richardson at development alternatives that were more consistent with the current future land use plan. And that's what you see over on the left-hand side. That's got the multifamily development up on Bowman Road where the existing multifamily land use is. And then the back portion of the project has got a more dense single-family development without the buffers and other improvements and stuff that went as part of the restrictions that we had proposed during the last Planning Commission meeting. And these were development alternatives that we were looking at and considering. Next slide, please. Prior to the Planning Commission meeting in May, Mr. Richardson met again with the board, the POA board of Brody Creek, and they went through and had an election where they went through and again voted on whether they were going to be in favor of the amended proposal or against the amended proposal. If you'll go to the next slide. This is the result. This is an excerpt from the letter. The opinion poll resulted in 36 for, 16 against, 4 no opinion, and approximately 26 people didn't vote. So in other words, the overwhelming majority of the residents in Brody Creek voted in favor of the revised proposal that you see today in this poll conducted by their POA. Next slide, please. This is the alternative development plan that's consistent with the current land use plan. And we don't have buffers, and we probably will have smaller lots than the lots in the adjacent subdivisions. Next slide, please. And then again, this is the development proposal that those 36 people in Brody Creek said that they would rather have, and is what was presented to the Planning Commission. Again, you see lots comparable to those in Brody Creek and Woodlands Edge, and the mixed-use development on the front, and then the multifamily on the extreme south portion. If you go to the next slide, please. And basically, I think that staff concurred with this, is that this is a mixed-use overall development. It's a planned development. Each portion of this plan will go back to the plan. During the residential development, that portion of the plan will go back to the Planning Commission and back to the board because it is a planned residential development. During the mixed-use process on the front, those development plans will be back at the Planning Commission and back at the board as those development plans progress. In other words, this is a planned unit development. It will be reviewed by the Planning Commission and by the board along each step of the way. We did get support from the Planning Commission, and we've got support from the 2 POA boards, from Woodlands Edge and from Brody Creek POA board. Grant, would you like to?
Mayor, pardon me, Mayor, Vice Mayor Hines, members of the Board of Directors. My name is Grant Cox. I'm with Quattlebaum Grooms and Toll. And first off, I just would like to state on behalf of the applicant our appreciation to the staff and to all of the residents who met with us to develop the current application that you see before you as amended, which we believed to be a reasonable mixed-use development. Now, given Mr. Dater's explanation of the project, I don't know that there's much more that I need to explain about the project itself, but I'd like to try to at least leave you with 3 thoughts. First of all, I've been practicing law for 10 years, and I know a lot of people have been practicing a lot longer, but during those 10 years, I've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of developers. And I consider a lot of those developers, my clients, to be fairly good people. But during those 10 years, it's been rare, and I don't even know if I've seen one, of a developer of this caliber working and being as diligent to try to obtain community input and also incorporate that input into his planned development. It's been almost a little bit over a year ago that Mr. Richardson, even prior to anything, started contacting neighborhood associations in order to just inform them of his plans and try to ask for their support. And then over the course of Planning Commission hearings and meetings of this board, Mr. Richardson not only complied with the legal requirements of regarding his application, but he also went over and beyond to communicate with neighborhood associations and local residents. I already mentioned that he contacted neighborhood associations, but he also held public forums for the community so that they could see his plans and they could have input. You've heard from Mr. Daters about the Brody Creek Neighborhood Association and their vote to support the project. And we have also the support of Woodlands Edge Neighborhood Association. Quite frankly, the support of these neighborhood associations is far more than I've seen in the past when working on some other developments in this city. All this work by Mr. Richardson brings me to my second point. Not only has Mr. Richardson listened to the residents, he's incorporated a lot of their concerns into his plan. Of course, not everything can be incorporated, but he's tried to work with them. You've seen the amendments that were made to the plan and approved by the staff and the Planning Commission. And in addition, Mr. Richardson has agreed with the neighborhood associations to he's agreed to execute a declaration of restrictions with regards to this property, which would incorporate a lot of the provisions that are in the application, but it would also provide some stricter provisions. One such thing would be, right now the application, I believe, calls for 408 units to be developed. he has agreed with the neighborhood associations to restrict that to 312. So that would be in the declaration, which isn't a part of our application, but that's what he's willing to compromise on and willing to work toward. So leading that, I suppose that my final point would be that Mr. Richardson has agreed to items in this application and in the declaration that I don't believe, and I haven't seen many other developers do. That's how strongly he believes in the plan that's being presented. Now, I know that there seem to be a lot in the audience here that are wishing to oppose this application, and a lot of them wearing the "Stop Rezoning" stickers that you're seeing. Now, I can't presume to know exactly what they're going to say in opposition to this, but based on testimony at previous hearings, I think that we can kind of distill their arguments all the way down to the very essence that it's not just stop rezoning, but rather it's stop development. There are many who oppose this application that would just like to see this property remain green space forever. The reality is that that's not going to happen. This area is going to be developed. Currently, the applicant owns the property, and he has to find a way to recoup his investment in it. He's offered a reasonable mixed-use approach that has incorporated many concerns of the residents of the community and has offered conditions and concessions to try to alleviate a lot of those concerns. However, as Mr. Daters showed, there are other alternatives that might, if we can't get approval, that might have to be done, including smaller lot sizes and things like that in order to allow Mr. Richardson to recoup his investment in this property. Thus, I suppose as it normally falls to the board has to weigh whether the opinions of some who wouldn't approve this project no matter what concessions, no matter what conditions were made, outweigh a plan which has been approved by the neighborhood associations that Mr. Richardson has worked with and has the support of city staff. It's my hope and the hope of the applicant that the board sees this plan as a plan of compromise rather than just a plan of no. We appreciate your time and consideration, and we're happy to answer any questions with regard to the declaration after we hear from the opposition, if that's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. And thank you, Mr. Daters. I don't have any questions for you at this time, but I do have cards, some additional cards, who wish to speak to this matter. The first one is Casey Covington. Mr. Covington.
Thank you, Mayor. I hope that in that list of 100 things to do in Little Rock, speaking to the public board is one of those, because I'll fulfill that today. So it should be. It definitely should be. There's a perception that we are against development, those of us that are against this rezoning, and that's simply not the case. There's a perception that we're against apartments. When I moved to Little Rock, I moved to Riverdale. I lived 2.5 years down there, and I value my time there. I'm not against apartments. We are not against apartments or development of this property. What we are against is the overconcentration of apartments in a single area of the city, which wasn't planned for such, and it is consistent with the surrounding development. Specifically, we are concerned about the impact that apartments have on traffic, crime, property values, and ultimately the character of the neighborhood in the area of Little Rock for which we chose to live. You'll hear from other neighbors tonight who will address each of these issues, as well as the number of apartments in this corridor, neighborhood votes, millennials and their choice to live in apartments. I would like to take this chance to talk to you about traffic on both Bowman and Canis. This is a real concern for all of us that live along those two roads. As development has occurred, it has become oversaturated and more difficult for us to get out and access the city. It is dangerous. You see crashes there often because there's inadequate gaps between vehicles for people to turn. And the roads are simply substandard for the area of Little Rock and those traffic volumes. Specifically, the intersections of Executive Center, Cherry Side, Brody Creek Trail, and 36 are a concern on Bowman Road. Emergency response times, including to our nearby medical rehab facilities, will continue to increase due to congestion on Bowman Road. I do want to, however, acknowledge you and this board for dedicating funding for the widening of Canis Road. We appreciate that. We hope you will find the additional money to complete that project, but that doesn't provide the funding to extend that for the remaining portions of Canis or to touch Bowman at this time, for which there are no money for. There's another concern that we have that includes the 52 acres that Mr. Richardson owns immediately west of the property which you see today. Planned developments are allowed so that you can group parcels of property under a single ownership, and you can consider the impact of all of those parcels, yet that is not being considered in this proposal, and it should be. You've been told that the Planning Commission approved this project multiple times. They turned it down the first time it came to them because of the same reasons we express today. It was approved in November without the knowledge and the depth of knowledge of the opposition of our neighborhood, which you can see here today. It was approved in May, but only looking at the changes for which the developer occurred. And there was significant discussion at that meeting about this property, but ultimately it was voted to approve it only on looking at those issues that had changed. There was still significant concern with this development. 10 years ago, we decided to stay in Little Rock and purchase a home along Bowman Road. When we did that, we expected that as Bowman Road developed, that the development that occurred and that the city permitted would be complementary and supportive of our neighborhoods. We've come to the conclusion that the proposal that's in front of you today simply is not that. And for that reason, we ask that you vote no on this rezoning. I'll also have to say, I do almost find it questionable that we call this a mixed-use development. It is 3 separate developments that just happen to be in a single parcel. I've seen a lot of good mixed-use developments. I'm not sure this is one. Now, I believe in people. I believe there are better options out here than we see for option A, option B. Our best choice is to turn this down and for us to find a better option for this property. I would also ask that you support Director Wright's request for a study of these impacts to our neighbors as a result of this overconcentration. Thank you. And our next speaker will be Ann Marshall.
I'll check the people. Thank you, Mr. Covington. I recognize you were trying to be prepared, so. But Ann Marshall, we'll let you go forward next, Ann.
I'm not taking that personally at all. Good evening, once again. I know that we're all tired of meeting like this, and I'm running out of red outfits to wear, so I hope that we're drawing toward a conclusion. I've written some things that I want to be very true to, because I understand the need for us to be concise and for us not to repeat many of the issues that we've brought before you before. So I want to start by talking with you about the POA vote. We've voted 3 different times in Brody Creek neighborhoods. The first time was in January of this year, with a clear majority of the neighborhood voting no against his proposal and the rezoning. Mr. Richardson persisted. He was meeting privately with our POA board, not with us as a group, although he did eventually have 2 open forums, one at his clubhouse and another at a local hotel. And a number of people from the various neighborhoods did attend. The second time that we voted, we also said no. But by that time, Mr. Richardson was becoming very persistent, and by persistent, I mean using strong-arm tactics against us that amounted to nothing less than threats. That's the way they felt to us. He had devised Plan A and Plan B, which you've seen on the screen tonight. Plan B was the first one we saw. Plan A is the second, adding 408 more apartments at the back of the property where Mr. Richardson would not have to build a roadway, an expensive roadway from that addition to Bowman, but could instead use the road that was already there behind the other established units. And he wanted to put in a commercial building, and also he said, well, he would build lots that are, houses on lots that are more spacious and very similar to Brody Creek residences, as you have heard. Later, as we continued to be resistant and concerned and feel like we weren't getting through with our broader concerns, he added more perks, as you have heard. And Plan B became something of a punishment if we were not willing to go for Plan A. That's also how it very much looked to us. So again, in May, a third vote was called. This was in collaboration with 2 members of our POA board that had met with him at other times in private. By that time, the residents were weary, and the residents staged a resistance by not voting, a number of them at any rate. So that is how that we came out with a majority appearing to support the plans, simply because a number protested by not voting at all. If that number were added to the number of no votes, it would have far outweighed those who had finally taken a deep breath and decided to accept what is construed as a compromise. The third vote is not a true picture of what our neighborhood believes is good for all of us in Bowman. I would like to read to you a statement that is on the letter that I believe you have a copy of. And that was the result of the third vote. It reads, the POA would like to reiterate the overall neighborhood opinion that there is not enough infrastructure along Bowman to support the planned development. And that's still the case. After the vote and the obvious displeasure of the majority of Brody Creek residents, Richard let it be known that he wanted to meet with us. Again, he was going to offer a third meeting. He never convened that meeting. We have not talked with him since. If he has met privately with our POA board, we are not aware of it. You know that I've already sent you a page full of occupants' remarks on the apartment rating sites that reflect much disgruntlement among apartment dwellers as to the quality of the facilities, particularly the thin walls that allow them to hear somebody brushing their teeth or have a full conversation. So what you don't know, you've heard that before, I brought this up to Mr. Richardson in a public meeting, and he claimed that that simply could not be so, because he insisted that his apartments are high-end and luxury units. Today I was asked to forward to you a letter, a form letter to the complex residents that was sent back in January, a very few days before your February meeting, to consider the applicant again. The letter is from one of the apartment's managers, urging the residents to lobby the board to approve the apartment expansion. Is that unreasonable? No. Is it legal? No. I just think it's interesting. And maybe it's from one of those residents who's found that thin walls are beginning to wear thin on him or her. And one last comment about something that was really put on my heart by listening to you, Mayor Stodola, and to our ambassador. When you ask us to come together to create a better way for all of us, that's the way we feel about our neighborhood, that's the way we feel about our city, and that's the way we feel about our schools. We are all stronger together when we find ways to come together instead of building barriers, whether that's a block of high-end apartments or whatever it is that separates us. We need one another. The health of our community, our entire city, depends on all of us being healthy. And that goes for our schools, all of our public schools, all of our schools, whether they're charters, whether they're traditional schools. They need our support. We support it with our taxes. We need to support it with our energy and our talk. I challenge everyone in this room and far beyond to find a way to get into our schools, see the joy of making kids' eyes light up, see how quality they really are, and be part of meeting the challenges for the strength that's going to benefit all of us. They're all our kids. They're all our schools. This is all our problem and our challenge. Thank you very much. And by the way, please vote no.
The next card I have is from David Shipley.
My name is David Curtis Shipley. I'm a resident of Woodlands Edge. And I want to speak to you about what we need in Little Rock. First of all, I think Director Wright's proposal for an independent study from UALR to look at the entire area is a really great idea, something that we need to think about how these communities all come together, how the road structures are set, how everything ties together. But I want to speak with you what my opinion as somebody who's been in the banking business or mortgage banking business for over 16 years is that what Little Rock needs more single-family residential neighborhoods. You have two neighborhoods along South Bowman, Cherry Creek, Sandpiper, which are great first-time home buyer neighborhoods. We need more neighborhoods like that to attract more people into Little Rock. We are oversaturated with apartments in our area. Traffic is bad. You're going to hear a lot more about that later on. You've heard about that already. But I'll encourage you to leave this property, the entire property, zoned single-family residence as it is, and let's build a community of single-family neighborhoods that everybody can benefit from this year, 5 years, 10 years down the road, because we all know what happens to apartments. I remember back 30 years ago coming to Little Rock when Green Mountain was a great place to live. And the apartments there have brought the homes in that area down. You see the same thing along Reservoir Drive. We need greater standards for what we do, especially the large developments. We need to have LED standards that when you have apartment complexes of this size, let's build something of quality, something of lasting value, something where you can't hear your neighbors brush their teeth. So let's please leave this property zoned single-family residential. Let's all work together to find something that can protect everyone's investments, ours and his. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shipley. Lacey Covington? I take it you're related to Casey Covington?
So thank you all for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm going to touch on a few things that have already been mentioned, and I'm going to primarily address the number of apartments that are in this corridor. So 10 years ago, Casey and I purchased our home in Cherry Creek, and because he's an engineer, we studied the land use plan. And we verified that all this area was indeed zoned for single-family housing. And we knew that all of this land around Bowman would eventually be developed. We had no doubt in our mind, and we wanted to ensure that that development would be comparable to the home that we were about to purchase. It was a large investment. So since that time, the board has approved 3 rezoning requests for large-scale apartment complexes along Bowman. So the current proposal in front of you tonight is the 4th rezoning request in these 10 years. So I want to take just a moment to talk to you about the number of apartments and all of the numbers that I will reference we received from the city of Little Rock, because there are varying numbers depending on where you look. So if the 312 additional apartments are approved tonight, the total number of apartments in the Point at Brody Creek and Herrick Heights alone would total 816 apartments. So the number of single-family homes currently in Brody Creek and Woodlands Edge total approximately 725. So you're looking at nearly 100 more apartments in just those two developments than single-family homes in those two neighborhoods. And this doesn't include the 500 additional apartments that are under construction on the east side of Bowman and the 250 that are under construction just south of 36th Street. So here's the big number. If the rezoning request is approved tonight, there will be 1,565 apartments in a 1-mile stretch of Bowman Road. 1,565 apartments within 1 mile. That's amazing. So in addition to the apartments along Bowman, there are approximately 1,300 apartments that have been built or are under construction along Canis. So essentially, our neighborhoods have been bracketed by apartments and effectively have been blockaded by traffic along these rural roads. I mean, they're 2-lane roads, there's no shoulder, and there's no money to fund the broadening the entire length of these roadways. And it's been brought up tonight that many of us are opposed to development at all. We're not just opposed to this rezoning, we want no development, and that is simply not the case. I think we would all agree that we are for smart and orderly growth for the city, but we're opposed to the overconcentration of apartments in an area that is and was zoned primarily single family. We're also opposed to being threatened, and that's definitely what happened, by developers who state, if you don't go along with my original plan, we'll go along with another plan and you'll like it even less. We urge you to have UALR conduct the study that Director Wright has requested to study the impact of multifamily development in a residential area that's primarily zoned for single family. So please hear our concerns here tonight. I know you've received a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls over the last year that this has gone on. So we encourage you to listen to those concerns and vote no to this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Covington. The next card I have is from Jamie Shipley. I take it David is your husband?
Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead,
Thank you,
Amy.
directors.
Jamie.
Jamie Shipley, and I live in Woodlands Edge. And I want to bring up, before I say anything else, a very important point. It's not just Woodlands Edge and Brody Creek who are opposed to this development. There are neighbors here from Cherry Creek and neighbors from Sandpiper. Those neighborhoods were never invited to have discussions with Mr. Richardson. The second point I want to make is that Mr. Richardson and his attorney have misrepresented the Woodlands Edge position. Initially, Woodlands Edge did approve of the project. That's before they ever talked to the neighborhood and we knew nothing about it. That's when it went to the Planning Commission the first time. After that, the neighbors in our neighborhood created quite the ruckus, and I have multiple emails from Greg Jones, who is the POA president for Woodlands Edge, stating that they have withdrawn their support and are not taking a position. So I want to correct the record there. There are other issues that I would like to correct, both brought up by Mr. Daters and by the fine attorney from Quattlebaum. Number one is the future land use plan is not the current zoning. The current zoning is single-family residential. For it to be anything other than that, you must approve the change. The Planning Commission, on the last consideration when you all sent it back, the Planning Commission stated, and they were advised by the city attorney, that they were not allowed to reconsider the project in its entirety. They were only allowed to say yes or no to the changes that were made. They were not allowed to consider the project in its entirety. And I think if you went back and looked at the minutes of that Planning Commission meeting, there were multiple commissioners who said, had they been allowed to reconsider the entire project, they would have voted no. In fact, one of those planning commissioners was here earlier tonight and hoped to make that point, but had to leave for childcare reasons. Number two, as I said, the Brody Creek POA did what they did, and that was represented well by Ann. The Woodlands Edge POA, Sandpiper, and Cherry Creek have not signed off on anything. It's not only Brody Creek who drives Bowman Road. All of our friends and neighbors in Woodlands Edge and Sandpiper and Cherry Creek, we drive those roads as well. So it's important to understand the thought processes of those neighborhoods. The Plan A, Plan B bullying thing, we've talked about that extensively. The 26 abstentions in the Brody Creek vote were, in fact, many of those protest votes. They should not be counted in the affirmative. If you want to look at purely who voted yes and purely who voted no, that might be a better way to do it. But counting those abstentions as yes votes is a terrible misjustice to those people. I like attorneys. Yeah, and I like words. I'm a former English major, and I think words are very important, and attorneys generally agree with that. So I want to talk about some of the things that were brought up here tonight. We are not anti-development. We are anti-oversaturation of apartments. As Casey Covington and his wife pointed out, there are now over 1,200 apartments within 1 mile of the entrance to Brody Creek. There are 1,300 apartments along Canis, and that's within 3 miles, many of them within less than half a mile of the back entrance to Woodlands Edge. It's impossible for us to turn out of the neighborhood on either road currently. Mr. Richardson bought this property knowing full well the views of the neighborhood. He brings it up now as if, oh, I bought it and I must do something with it. This is totally unexpected. It wasn't unexpected. He knew when he went before the Planning Commission, he didn't own the property and that we were opposed. He knew every time we've been before you, he didn't own the property and that we were opposed. He made the strategic decision to buy it, hoping that that would weigh in his favor at this point. And I don't think that he should be rewarded for that particular decision. Basically, what it comes down to is this. We have some problems with this development. We are oversaturated with apartments, 2,500 on Canis and Bowman alone. The traffic conditions are terrible. The road conditions are terrible. We've been told multiple times there's no money to improve those. Improving 200 yards at a time is not improving a road. The residents of these developments don't drive on just those 200 yards. Those 200 yards end and they go back onto an unimproved Bowman Road and an unimproved Canis. In fact, while we are glad, as Casey Covington mentioned, that you're improving Canis, what that's going to do for us in the interim is increase the number of cut-throughs through Brody Creek and Woodlands Edge. We are seeing those increase daily. We have people speed through the neighborhoods. They don't understand how to use the roundabouts. They don't yield to pedestrians. One of the reasons that those of us who live in Woodlands Edge move there is because it's a great pedestrian neighborhood. We have trails and walkways. Those trails cross roads. People that don't live in the neighborhood don't stop. They're not aware that that's what those are. It's a problem. We've seen an increase in crime. If you look from a year ago to now currently, we have break-ins now almost every week into someone's car. I think you can correlate that to the number of people from outside the neighborhood or driving through, making that their pass-through. Houses are staying on the market longer. Property values, houses are selling for less than they sold for previously. We have some concerns in addition to these problems. One is this misperception that there's a continued need for luxury apartments based on millennials. I lived in an apartment once, and I bet everyone here did too. At some point, you grow up, and you have a family, and you move into a house, because that's what you do. We don't live in Chicago or San Francisco or New York or cities where families are traditionally raised into apartments. We live in Arkansas. It's rural, it's green, there's land. Almost everyone eventually moves into a house. At some point, we need to stop thinking about what people need for this moment. The other part of that is the millennials, and that's a loose term, people have not been able to get financing for houses in the last several years since the mortgage crisis. Those things are loosening up. My husband can tell you more about that. But there'll become a point where people are going to say, I'm no longer going to spend $1,300 a month on an apartment that I'm paying to Mr. Richardson. I'm going to take that $1,300 and I'm going to apply it toward a mortgage for something that I own for myself. What happens in 20 years? I'm very concerned about what happens on Bowman Road and what happens to our neighborhood. Someone mentioned Green Mountain Drive. I used to live there in the early 90s. It was a good place. We have Reservoir, we have Napa Valley, we have multiple examples of what happens when apartments become oversaturated within a neighborhood and what happens not only to the apartment buildings themselves, but to the surrounding single-family residences. And Casey Covington also mentioned the additional acreage that Mr. Richardson owns. We are very concerned about what he plans to do with that, and we've not gotten a straight answer about that yet. But what are our desires? We have things that we do want. We obviously want Herrick Heights to remain a single-family residential property. We want a thoughtful, comprehensive development plan that's built on the concept of neighborhoods. Cherry Creek, Sandpiper, Woodlands Edge, Brody Creek. Apartments can be certainly incorporated into that, but that's not what we see now. We see these large complexes. There's no incorporation with the existing neighborhoods. If you want a good example of incorporating apartments into a neighborhood, we only have to go a little ways down the street. Hillcrest is a perfect example of small unit apartments being incorporated into neighborhoods. That's a thriving community full of families and people and businesses and apartments and houses and schools. It's not, here was a single-family residential neighborhood, and now here for the rest of the road are apartments. Little Rock needs more single-family neighborhoods of various price points. Bowman has been a good example of this. Several people have mentioned it. I'll mention it again. All the neighborhoods on Bowman are at different price points. And we all get along with one another. We're all together in this. It can happen, and we would encourage that. We appreciate the moratorium on future apartments that you all undertook earlier in the year, and we really like that study into what happens when large complexes are placed next to single-family neighborhoods. And I guess the final thing that we would ask is we want to figure out a way for an overall development plan for the city of Little Rock that takes all of these concerns into account, so that instead of things being approved piecemeal and rezoning happening one off here and one off there, we want to figure out what the city of Little Rock is going to look like. Larger metropolitan areas are routinely doing this now. It's not impossible for us to do. We want to figure out a way to pay for infrastructure without relying on developers to do this 200-yard piecemeal approach to building a road. I don't know about you, I frankly think it's dangerous. It encourages people to speed up during the wide part, and then everyone slams on their brakes when they come back together on the unimproved part of the road. It's a problem. And I'll, like Ann Marshall, I appreciated what you had to say, Mayor, about the spirit of unity bringing neighbors together. If nothing else comes out of this, I know my neighbors way better than I ever knew them before. I know neighbors in Cherry Creek, in Sandpiper, in Woodlands Edge, in Brody Creek. I know you all, certainly. I knew some of you before, but I know most of you much better now. We want to work together. We have a very diverse neighborhood, by the way. I think Director Hendricks, you've mentioned that before. Woodlands Edge, I would suggest to you, is one of the most diverse neighborhoods in Little Rock. We have families of all ethnic origin. We have houses of various and sundry sizes, from 1,500 square feet to over 3,000 square feet. We all get along beautifully. We have retired couples. We have families with very young children. We have families who have children in high school and college. We have people with no children at all. And we like one another. We want to work together. We like our diverse neighborhood. We want to build communities. What we don't want are miles and miles and miles of apartments, because that's not in the best interest of our existing neighborhoods. Frankly, it's not in the best interest of Little Rock. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Shipley, Director Hendricks, I think, has a comment or question for you, please.
Sure.
I missed it. Why were you referencing me? What were you saying?
I think at the last Planning Commission meeting that I was at, which was not the one before, my son was in the hospital and I wasn't here, you asked a question about the diversity of our neighborhood. So that's why I addressed it to you.
I don't recall that because it really wouldn't matter with me.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry then. I think several of us thought that, but if that is not the case, then I apologize.
Keith Smith, please.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Board of Directors, for this prepared statement, for the opportunity to tell you why I love Little Rock, and I'm asking you to vote no to Herrick Heights. My name is Keith Smith, and I live in a wonderful neighborhood of Brody Creek. We moved to Brody Creek because of its unique feel of an old-time neighborhood with porches close to streets so neighbors know each other. This kind of environment where neighbors are friends and talk builds strong, healthy neighborhoods. I grew up in Pine Bluff. I remember when it was a wonderful place to be. I'm saddened that most of those memories are long gone. It's disheartening to see your once shining town fall into ruin and decay, and probably with little chance of it being resurrected. I'm also old enough to remember when Southwest Little Rock was a great place to call home. I'm saddened to see that my memories of Pine Bluff have vanished. I'm also old enough to remember when Southwest Little Rock was a wholesome place. Now I see areas like others have mentioned, Rebsamen, Green Mountain, Reservoir, Maryland for sure, and Napa Valley age while crime has increased. Strong neighborhoods are the backbone of every city. Everyone knows apartments run a cyclical pattern. What will happen when the millennials, if that's who moves into such places, become homeowners? Others have mentioned that just now. I fear Little Rock will have an overabundance of aging apartments, as others have mentioned, and all of the awful negatives that go with that. When you vote, think about South Canis will look like, as Jamie Shipley mentioned, 10, 15 years from now, or longer. Look at crimes with apartments that used to be new and nice, and we see that cyclical pattern almost given with this project. The single largest investment most of us have is our home. If you continue on the path of overbuilding apartments, I believe you will see families move out, and the tax base that goes with that will go along with them. Please support the neighborhoods of Little Rock. I do believe that every one of us purchased our homes were told and duly informed that it was zoned for single-family development. That is how the land should remain. I'm asking you to vote no to Herrick Heights to save my new hometown, to keep Little Rock from becoming a place that used to be nice. Little Rock is a city worth fighting for, and I'm asking you to fight and save Little Rock from this certain path of destruction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Melissa Smith.
Our daughter Sophia was too shy to come up. Director Adcock had asked me to bring her up, but she was a little shy. I'm Melissa Smith. A lot of it's already been said, and I've been scratching out my notes so that I don't waste your time and repeat. I do want to emphasize that all of us, when we purchased our homes, asked our realtors about all the land that's adjacent to where we live. What's going to happen? We were all told that it's zoned for single unit housing and that it would continue to be homes, much as we have in Woodlands Edge and Brody Creek. And that's what needs to happen. We're not against development. My family is in development. I'm not against development. What I am against is what's happening in this small congested areas. I want to make a comment about this, all these terms we're hearing about millennials. I couldn't help but laugh when Jamie said that millennials, they are going to grow up and get married, and you know, it sort of reminds me of my favorite black and white old time movie, It's a Wonderful Life. I mean, at some point, the millennials will not keep paying old man Potter and keep making him richer. They'll want to own their own homes and build their own wealth. And that's what we should be helping and supporting and pushing, pulling people up. When you talked about Ward 1, that's the kind of thing. We need to be working on all that together. So I'm with you. And I think that millennials it's a phase. And it's a phase that's certainly going to potentially make some people who are already very wealthy even more wealthy. But I ask you, at what price? At what price to the city? What price to the homeowners? What price to the residents? And for most of us who our homes is our our largest investment that we have. What's going to happen when we retire? I want to talk just briefly about, I want to first of all say, please continue, or I don't know what's going on with all of the studies that Director Wright has asked the city manager to engage UALR to conduct a study on the impact of the multifamily developments and single-family residential developments. But we have this 1 year, and that's fabulous. I mean, this was the first time, I believe, isn't it? The first time in history that the city, you good people all voted for the 1 year moratorium on building more additional multi-unit housing. Well, when it comes to these studies, I don't know where we are with all of this. I'd like to find out, but I will say this, we're not going to know in 1 year, because a lot of these places, they're not going to be finished in a year. And if the rumors are true, and I'm hearing about all this other development on Canis, and if it's true that we're going to have a Lowe's at the corner of South Bowman and Canis, we're not going to have traffic studies. Yeah, you're going to be, a 1 year isn't going to do it. It's great, and we need to look at that, but it needs to be an ongoing thing, not just a quick fix. It needs to be something like Director CONCOURSE, who wisely said that it's time for the city to stop putting the cart before the horse. It's time to stop all this patchwork development. Now, as far as knowing about studies, I don't know about your studies, but I'm going to tell you what this mama's study is. Jamie was just, I mean, I'm a little shaky because last night, I'm sorry, I'm just a little shaky. Some things have happened. Last night, I was taking my daughter home from Cheer and repassed Mr. Richardson's apartments. A blue car with tinted windows and a truck pulled out behind me. I proceeded down the hill towards Brody Creek slowly with my turner on to turn left. I have to stop because all of the southbound ongoing traffic is coming. Well, I'm stopped, and I look in the rear view. It was the closest thing to a 3-car smash-up I've ever been in. And we don't have shoulders. I was terrified. And I thought we were going to have photos tonight. We have another family in Brody Creek who had an accident on Bowman Road where they had their small child in the car seat. Their car was completely flipped over. Thank God they were all okay. But we are seeing accidents. I mean, it almost happened to me that people are speeding through our neighborhoods. We have had, and I hesitate to say this because I don't want to, well, I don't want to invoke fear, but we've had at my house two attempted break-ins while I was home alone with the security alarm on. It's never happened in our neighborhood to anyone else. And I worry about safety. I worry when I'm home. I always make sure the alarms are on. I'm making sure I'm looking into cameras. I don't want to have to get a gun with a small child in my home, but these things they're frightening. And I'm also very worried about the property values for all homeowners of Little Rock. This isn't just, I get so frustrated. Last night I saw, any of y'all see THV? There's a report, it's like shows, it was so confusing. They were showing Brody Creek and then Mr. Richardson's developments and almost made it look like Brody Creek is part of Mr. Richardson. And it's like, no, that's not the case. I don't know, I'm very worried about property values for all homeowners because if people do start leaving because of crime, we're all going to lose our investments. It truly can be, back to my wonderful life, it truly can be a wonderful life in Little Rock. I love Little Rock. I'm from Fayetteville. My mom's always saying, oh, we're the #1 place to live. And I'm like, whatever. But it can be a wonderful place. But please support the neighborhoods. Vote no to Herrick Heights. I heard so many mistruths. I'm going to be very polite with that, spoken from the opposition. So many lies that our neighborhood did not support. We did not have meetings. I could go on and on. I also have concerns about these threats. What are you voting for tonight? Plan A, Plan B? Plan A, I don't even remember which one. Which one is supposed to be the better one that, if you do this, then I'll help you. It was not going to be as bad. But if you don't do what I say, I'm going to make it miserable for you. I'm going to smack homes right up in. We've just had so many threats. And I'm concerned about when they were showing the land with the 3 areas proposed, couldn't he go back to the Planning Commission and request a change of each time? Like Mr. Richardson himself has told me he does not build homes. He told me himself it is not profitable for him to build homes. The land was too expensive. Now, at other times, he has told others that he will put in the infrastructure, like with roads, and then perhaps have builders. But then again, he told me he wouldn't be able to get builders who would build there because the land's too expensive. So what we all really think is going to happen? He gets his foot in the door, all this residential stuff, or the homes, no, it's going to be more of the same. It's going to be more apartments. And I really want us to look.
Melissa, if you
Yeah.
try to, we've heard many of these.
I'm sorry.
And you're repeating many of the
I'm
arguments.
sorry, I'm just
and
really
so
rattled from
if you would
things that
just
have happened.
try and bring yourself to the
Yes,
to focus on the closure on any new points that haven't been already.
No, I
brought
just
to our
want to say,
attention.
let's not look back and find, 10 or 15 years and find we're living in Pottersville. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a couple of directors who. Director Wright, go ahead, please.
Yes, in response to Ms. Smith's question as to about the moratorium and 1 year is too short, the 1 year was all that the city attorney felt that the city could legally defend. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I do recall that's what you said, Mr. Carpenter.
That's
Okay.
correct.
So that's why we did the 1 year. I initially asked for 3, but I knew I wouldn't get that. And in regards to the study, I see Mr. Moore is not at his desk. Okay, he's talking to staff, but I have reiterated that request to him. I don't know where he is in that decision-making process, but I'm still hoping that we get that because I do think we need some real data instead of conjecture and fear. And I, as I shared with the board last week at the agenda meeting, I know that there is an impact because I've felt it in other areas in the West Central Little Rock and the Ward 6 area. We've seen the impact. So hope that answers your question about the moratorium and the study. Mr. Moore has not given me a response yet. Thank you.
Mr. Moore, do you have any update relative to the UALR request?
Mayor, members of the board, we have made contact with the Chancellor's office, and we're going to try to sit down with them in the next week or two to try to develop a scope within this timetable. I think Mr. Carpenter, and he can weigh in on at appropriate time once we visit with them and kind of determine a scope, whether that can be extended. I'm not so sure how he feels about that, but let us sit down with them, and then we'll report back.
Director Hendricks, do you have a comment or question, please?
I wanted to ask you a question. Normally, it's sort of a limit, not time frame, but do you have many more cards for people to speak for or against? Because I'm going to be leaving.
I've got 2 more cards to speak against, and then we'll give the applicant an opportunity to respond to some of the issues that have been raised.
Do you have any for?
We've already had the 4s.
Okay, thank you, because I'll be leaving.
Mr. Veach. Thank you, Mr. Veach. And Rob Scherer.
Mayor and board, it's a privilege to be able to speak to you tonight. So much has already been covered, I won't run back over all of it. I'll just hit 2 quick points. One was made by the developer saying that the POA of Woodlands Edge, I'm from Woodlands Edge, right in the middle of it, that the POA of Woodlands Edge voted to approve one of his plans. If they did so, they certainly did not inform the members, the people, the property owners in Woodlands Edge. This was totally news to me tonight. That's said, a quick correction there. One other point, just my major point, and my wife's major concern is public safety. That is, get on Bowman at either Colonel Glenn or Canis and try driving it at the speed limit, 35, all the way from one end to the other, and notice the safety and the lack of safety, especially if you're at any time of rush hour. And imagine what it's going to be like with another 200 to 500 cars on the road. It's going to be a major problem, and so we would not say this shouldn't be done, only that the existing condition of Bowman Road and Canis Road are such that until they are improved, the further development to put more and more cars on the road is going to cause major public safety problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, that concludes the cards. Mr. Daters or Mr. Cox, do either of you wish to respond to any of the items that have been raised?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be very brief. This particular parcel is the last parcel that's got future land use shown as multifamily in this area. This is the last bit of multifamily shown on the existing future land use plan. In terms of the concentration of apartments, our office is out on Rawling Road. If you go to the intersection of Rawling Road and Kirk, within about a mile radius right there, right now there's about 1,000 multifamily units in the mile radius, and there's about another 800 units that have either in the planning or zoning. So we've got, it's not unusual to see them clustered around arterial streets and nodes. That's typically where you do see them clustered in these areas. Grant, did you have anything real quick?
Yeah, Mr. Daters, obviously there's been some variance of opinion about land use plans and the issue of designating either single-family residential or multifamily. And perhaps either you or the staff, Mr. Moore, can clear up that issue. I mean, we heard several citizens say this was residential, single-family residential. I've heard you just say that it was the last piece of multifamily land use designated property, and I think it's important that that issue be cleared up.
Yeah, the land use is what the city is, the land use dictates, it reflects what the city thinks the appropriate use for that piece of property is. The land use does not allow use. The use is allowed when the property is actually zoned to come into compliance with the future land use. Typically, when we make zoning proposals, we're asking to rezone property consistent with the current future land use. Those are the type of projects that we get support for and that we get approved, is when we're staying consistent with the plan.
And I'll let staff elaborate later if necessary, but Mr. Cox, did you have any follow-up in response to any of the comments that have been made so far?
I did just want to address one issue. I think we had one person indicate that once Mr. Richardson got his foot in the door, what's to prevent him from doing anything else? That's sort of where he came to the agreement on this declaration of restrictions that you see in front of you. Essentially, once this is rezoned and he signs this, then if he sells the lots to any other developer or any other entity, those lots have to remain the certain size that they are and comply with all the restrictions contained in that. So I just wanted to alleviate those concerns that this isn't just his way to get the foot in the door. This is his plan, and this is how he has agreed and compromised with the citizens in the neighborhood based on their input. And this is essentially the I think probably one of the best ways to preserve the development as has been stated.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Okay, it looks like we have some directors who wish to comment. Director Wright, you're the first, please. You're recognized.
Yes, Mayor, I did want that point clarified, that the actual zoning on the property as it stands right now is single-family residential, and the multifamily is only on the future land use portion. And Mr. Carpenter, I want you to clarify this for all concerned. Is the board required to allow multifamily on this parcel of land, even though the future land use says multifamily, but the overall zoning is single family? Are we obligated to allow multifamily on this site?
No.
Thank you.
Director CONCOURSE, you're recognized, please.
I'd like Tony to come up and go over the points that have been made, and then talk about them, and then talk about why his department's for this plan.
Director CONCOURSE, Mayor Stodla, Vice Mayor Hines, members of the board. The request before you is for a 74-acre tract. Let me go back to Director CONCOURSE. You said the points have been made tonight by
I go from the agenda meeting, and I think I hear what I'm hearing, and then I hear a whole different set, and I'm wondering if I'm talking about the same 74 acres. Obviously, you've been through this for a long period of time, and your department has come down in favor of this, correct?
Yes.
And so I'd like for you to walk through and give us your thoughts on why you feel that way.
Okay. Again, it's a 74-acre tract, and what's being proposed is a mix of uses. Multifamily in one area, single-family residential along what would be the northern half of the property adjacent to Brody Creek, and then another area along Bowman Road that's proposed for potentially non-residential, O1, which is a quiet office, but it even allows single-family or duplexes by right. So we looked at what was being proposed and also a large percentage of the properties being left as open space. And we looked at that. We looked at the land use plan. And if we can go to the land use plan, Mr. Carter. As has been mentioned, a portion of this property that's under consideration is shown as residential medium density, higher density than single family. And if you look at the plan, this area at the intersection of two arterials, West 36th Street and also Bowman Road, has a more intense land use pattern on the future land use plan. And it's being developed that way to some extent. And what we see is what's being proposed is you have south of the existing point at Brody Creek, an area of suburban office, non-residential. Then you get into the multifamily, and you're slowly transitioning from the non-residential to a little higher density residential, and then ultimately to that single-family area. So we feel that that's a reasonable transition. And even if we can further to the south, there's more commercial development shown or proposed on the land use plan. So we took all that into consideration, and we feel it's, again, we see it as a mixed-use development because it has multiple uses. It's not multifamily or single-family. It's a combination of those uses and potentially some other uses on that front portion. So we are in support of it, and again, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the plan and then was asked to review the application with these 3 additional conditions or amendments, and they voted 7-4 in support of those as part of this plan.
Tony, can you speak to the issue that the opponents bring up about just the overall number of apartments within a contained area from a planning professional staff point?
Again, you're looking at a node area, and it's shown for more intense development. And so we feel if you're going to increase density, this is the appropriate location. And there are other, Mr. Daters mentioned some other locations where you have, if you want, a concentration. Also, Pleasant Ridge Road has a number of units are concentrated along, and that's a relatively short segment of that street. And so we feel that this is an appropriate location to allow this type of development pattern.
Okay, Director Wyrick, you're next, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Tony, I'm glad you came up. I want to talk a little bit about the zoning. How did this property become residential in the first place? Was it brought in from the county as residential, or was there a study done and this was made residential in the beginning? Because it appears that we were really a lot of residential coming from Canis going south. So how did this get determined to be residential?
The existing zoning of R2 single family?
Right.
Director Wyrick, if typically if this area, and I don't know if it was when it was annexed, but property that's annexed usually comes in as R2 single family,
right,
unless there's a plan for the area, such as the ranch or Chenal, and then sometimes there's a zoning process that will comply with their plan of a development plan for that area.
Do you know if there was a plan for this area for residential?
The future land use plan is the only one I'm aware of. Now, many years ago, the owners of what is now Brody Creek did a master plan for a much larger area, which their ownership, I think, extended into what is now Woodlands Edge. And I just don't recall the specifics of what that plan showed.
Okay. You mentioned that this seems to have a more intense land use pattern. How did it get to be more intense? Was it because we were doing spot zoning of apartments here and apartments there and offices there, from one, from one location to another? And did the staff determine that, well, that's the way this is going, so this is going to be intense development? Or did the city sit down and say, okay, for future land use, we're going to make all this residential, we're going to make this mixed use, we're going to make this different things? How did you get to the point where you determined that this should be a more intensive land use pattern?
It was a process over a number of years. And again, we're looking at an intersection of two arterials in close proximity to an interstate that does not have an interchange, but I think at one time there was an interchange proposed at West 36th Street and Interstate 430. So that would be a logical area to allow for a more intense land use pattern.
How old is the future land use plan that we're working from today?
If you allow me, I think I have that
Hurry.
information.
No, I'm just kidding.
We've done several memos on this issue, so let me get to the right one.
Okay. Did they come to me and I don't remember them?
We did one back on, this is dated January 28th. I'm not sure when it was, of this year, when it went out to the board.
Okay.
But we went back, the question was just to provide additional information about the development, such as a future land use plan. Staff looked at the adopted land use plan for the area as far back as the 1983 adoption of the amended I-430 district plan. And at that time, all the properties around Bowman and West 36th Street were indicated as residential low density. In 1987, the plan was amended to indicate an area of multifamily east of Bowman at West 36. And then in 1989, several changes were made to the plan. A node of mixed office commercial was established around the Bowman 36 intersection, wrapping around the mixed office, extending up to Brody Creek areas of multifamily. Low-density multifamily and office were established.
And when was that? What did you say?
Probably 1989.
1989. Okay. Was Brody Creek and Woodlands Edge developed by that time?
No, I don't think.
They came after that?
Yes.
Okay. The reason I'm asking that is because we hear this time and time again from residential people that, they're being very thoughtful, because as one person was talking about, he lived in Pine Bluff, and when he came to Little Rock, he wanted to make sure that where he was going was the type of residence he wanted to move into. And we looked at the plans, and the plan showed residential, so we said, yes, we'll purchase property here. Where I live, I have a FedEx, as many of you know, in front of my house. But when I bought my house, I knew I had industrial property around me. So I knew there was a potential for something industrial. So I tried to buy as much property as I could afford so I could control what was going on. These individuals bought property. They saw residential. There's residential on the map. So how does a conscientious property buyer determine in the city of Little Rock where they can live and not have something that's going to be distasteful to them, such as apartments, lots of intensive types of developments around them? If we're going to continually change our zoning as we go through. See, what I think has happened here is we started having some spot zoning in different areas. Things started coming in, and so we said, oh, okay, so it looks like we're going apartments, or we're going to do commercial, we're going to do other things, so this is the way the area is going. It sounds like to me that the development is driving what's happening in this area.
Again, there's zoning, and that's how the property can be used, but a tool that this city uses, and this is adopted by ordinance, so it's acted on both by the Planning Commission and by this board, is the future land use plan. And it shows what this city has determined that is potentially appropriate development pattern for particular areas. And, you know, the plan is citywide, and we go back every so many years and review it.
Review them, and you look at what's there and you say, okay, this looks like this is going industrial, this is going residential, or there's a bunch of trailers here, so more trailers are appropriate. Is that right?
We look at the plan, what's happened over the years, and if there's been some zoning changes, we look at those and then make a determination if a land use change is appropriate.
Okay, I have one more question for you. Okay, so we're making this a planned development, and part of it's residential, part of it's office. I forgot what the term was for it, and then the other part is apartments. So you didn't like this plan in the beginning because you didn't get identifications of what the other pieces of that 70-plus acres was going to be. And so now that's what's been determined for this piece of property. So it's planned development. So each one of these pieces of development has to go through a process and it has to follow whatever the predetermined plan is, either single-family housing or a certain type of office or commercial. So say we get to rocking along here, and a few years later, we determine that we want more apartments on the front where that office or commercial is planned. All the developer has to do is go back to file an application, go back to the Planning Commission, get approval from there, and then come to the board and get approval there. It's a simple process.
Well, that's the process, but it's not guaranteed that he'll get approval.
But if this area is going into an intense land usage pattern, and it looks like everything's going apartments, and he wants to put apartments in the front, or apartments where that residential street is, we'll say, well, it's consistent with what's going on in the area. And we'll say, okay, we think this is consistent. Now, is that not the way it happens?
Well, application will be filed with the staff, we'll review it, we'll make a recommendation to the Planning Commission. They hold their public hearing, and then in turn, if they recommend approval, that moves forward to this board, and you'll hear it. And then you make the final recommendation, or final vote on it, up or down.
Yeah, I've been here a while, and I see what happens. And so just because he's come with this planned development doesn't necessarily mean that that's the way it'll stand going forward. That's all I had for him, but I do have a question for Tom. Can I?
You got the microphone.
Okay. Tom,
Yes.
did you see this declaration of restrictions? Have you looked at that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, there's one item in here, item 9, modification and cancellation.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me what that means? What this is outlining?
What it attempts to do is to say that there's not going to be any changes upon the agreement until there's been a majority vote by Brody Creek, Woodlands Edge, and so forth. There is some language in there to say that they will be able to negotiate for changes and not be bound by a certain decision of the Arkansas Supreme Court, and to be able to act under 2011 action, which was I think it was probably passed in relation to that. But this doesn't mean anything. You don't have this agreement in place. And the agreement's not in place. So if we pass the ordinance, without the agreement being in place, there's no guarantee any of the agreement will apply.
Okay, let me go just a little bit further. So if they decide that they want to change this plan development and they want to change their, say, their residential sites to apartments, do you think that was supposed to have a collaboration between the owner and the property owners, and that everybody had to agree with that? Do you think that's what that is for?
I don't know what their intent was. I think that they were trying the best they could to say that this will be a cooperative effort. The problem I've got is we've heard enough about Bowman Road to know that Bowman Road's going to have to change at some point in the future, and that's going to change this whole area. And so what will that do and how that will impact is a question I don't know. This is good for 10 years. It says it can be renewed for another 10 years, but I don't know if that means it's going to have to be unanimous to renew it or not.
Okay, and so it talks about majority of the members of Brody Creek POA
Right.
and also Woodlands Edge, I guess, say Woodlands Edge.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so majority of the members, now we were told earlier tonight that there were 725 homes in Brody Creek and Woodlands Edge. So what would be the majority for, that?
Director
It's
Wyrick, I
not
can't
gonna
answer
be-
that because it says that it's done in accordance with the bylaws, so I don't know if that means a majority of the residents in those homes, or if that means a majority of the owners of those homes. Is it one vote per home? Is it something more? I just don't have that
But
document
it
before
certainly
me.
should be more than 36, which they're saying that the property owners passed this, or there's that many people that are for this.
I just can't answer that question.
There's another part in here that talks about the roundabout, and I don't know which part it is, but basically it said that they would try to do that, provided that there was, it was reasonable priced or
Right.
reasonable access or something like that, which
It's
means
paragraph
that if,
6B.
okay, which means that if they can't make it work, then that's not gonna happen. So how does this document work with what we're voting on tonight?
It doesn't. There is no document. This isn't signed. They've said that they're going to enter into this, but once your ordinance is passed, this document has no impact. If it's not signed, it has no limitation.
Okay, so it would have to be signed, but even if it was signed, could it be a part of this?
I don't think you would want to make it a part of the ordinance because it looks like you're making certain future land use things a matter of contract between parties who aren't the city, and that gives me some concerns.
Okay, so if there is a breach of this declaration of restrictions, then the fight will be between the residents and the developer, and the city would not be involved.
That's what it intends to do, but that's why I go back to if we have to expand Bowman Road and that creates changes, I'm not sure that the city wouldn't be brought in at that time. If we expand Bowman Road, they can't have setbacks, they can't have certain types of things, and they want to use a different use. And there is the agreement is very clear that a right of injunctive relief is given to the property owners, which is very generous on the part of the developer. But if the change is a result of something the city's done, I can't tell you the city won't be brought in if there's a disagreement between those two.
Okay, so is it to our benefit for this to be signed?
Director Wyrick, I've had this all of 30 minutes, and I noticed the problems I've noticed. I don't have the underlying documents, I don't have the exhibits, and I don't have the bylaws for any of the property owners associations to find out what exactly has to occur.
Okay, so we should just totally disregard this document?
I would say you make your zoning decision based upon whether you think this is a good land use decision. This doesn't need to be a part of it.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Director Hendricks, you're next, please.
I have questions and concern. And my question is, how long have we been talking about this project? About 3
Well,
months?
looks like it was here in February.
Oh, my God. And not before then? From what I was talking, it's been,
No.
well, I want to concur with Dean Compuris, and I would love for Tony to come back to the podium. Tony, it's not going to be much. Not going to be a whole lot. The thing that I wanted to say to you as a staff person, I respect you. I think I've said this many, many times since I've been up on this board, is that I believe that you have brought to us what is applicable to the law. I think that with us questioning you and having a long dissertation about what's going on, I think it's unfair to you. And I really would like to know, and I think you've already said it, is that you have actually put before us, and then the Planning Commission has supported what you have done for us. Is that a sound statement?
We made a recommendation of approval of this proposed development to the Planning Commission, and they have voted in the majority to recommend approval to this board.
Thank you.
Director Kazort, you're next, please.
Thanks, Mayor. And actually, like Tom, having seen this for about 30 minutes, I read through it and had some serious concerns about paragraphs 9 and 10 and what the actual effect of that was, and the fact that it's not part of the ordinance. But I think he's discussed that appropriately, and I don't think we need to delve into that anymore.
Vice Mayor Hines, you're recognized, please.
Thank you. I guess the question is, I thought there was, Tony, maybe come up here one more time, as to what went on in the last Planning Commission meeting. And I'm going to try to be brief. Tony, were any of there's been proffers of deed restrictions and stuff, and what I go back to is the Rawling Road rezoning, and I think this is very similar in mirror to what Villages of Wellington and a couple other neighborhoods worked with Deltic Timber on the rezoning of Rawling Road. So was there any proffers of deed restrictions into the record? And I guess the other question for Tom, this isn't deed restrictions, correct?
No, it attempts to make certain requirements run with the land.
Right, and I think.
But it's not an agreement. This is just paper right now.
Okay, no, I understand that, and I'm trying to see what transpired.
Vice Mayor Hines, I don't think so, and I don't think the minutes reflect that, but what the commission was reviewing were those three conditions that were offered back whenever it was at the board in March, I think, and then you all sent it to the Planning Commission for their review.
All right, thank you, Tony. And my last comments are just this, that this is a very complex and emotional issue. I represented this area when it used to be in my ward. I have lots of friends there, and I will say that I have several friends that sit on the houses closest to this development, and they are in support of this application because it gives them the knowledge of what kind of houses and lots are going to develop, and it creates a buffer for them between their houses and the multifamily development. And I can only speak from personal experience. I live in Villages of Wellington. That's an area that I know within a mile radius, and I can tell you on all four corners of our neighborhood were bracketed by multifamily. Built my house 12 years ago. Our neighborhood was kind of the precursor. The developer, Ron Tyne, developed Woodlands Edge, and then he started he developed Villages of Wellington, but he also developed Woodlands Edge. And, our neighborhood, the biggest concern for us, and this is almost identical to what my neighborhood negotiated with Deltic on the Rawling Road rezoning, which was to buffer and shield our neighborhood from the multifamily, get a reduction in the density of the multifamily, which it's all met. And because it gives us a surety of what's going to happen on that piece of property. And I've heard from many of you guys tonight that you want to develop a single-family residential, and I urge you to understand what our single-family residential by right uses are as far as site plan review, what the minimum lot size are and what that is, because I think, and I've seen this happen in the years I've been up here, is people say we want it to develop how it's zoned, and then when it's developed how it's zoned, they don't like that either. So I just caution you. I think this is a well-thought-out plan. That's been a lot of work. I know it's emotional, and there's nothing I can say. I can just speak from my personal experience that our neighborhood has flourished. We've not had negative impacts from the multifamily that's in the areas around our neighborhood. You know, when I was building my house, we had some being built. So I'll take all this into consideration. Thank you.
Director Adcock, you're recognized, please.
Tony, I tried to tell you to stay up here a moment ago and you didn't.
I'm sorry, I guess my hearing's going bad, too.
Okay, you heard a while ago, I don't know if it was you or Tom, talking about that when we have to do something with Bowman, all this is going to change. Was that you or is it Tom?
I think Mr. Carpenter made some comments.
This declaration that we have, that we looked at and everything, was that ever given to the Planning Commission?
Director Adcock, I don't think so.
Okay, so it was just presented tonight.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to know if the Planning Commission had looked at it.
I don't think so.
As Mr. Carpenter called it, it's just some pieces of paper. Because evidently, Mr. Carpenter, am I right, it has no, the city does not enforce it in any way?
No, there's certain provisions in there that allow changes if the Board of Directors votes for them in the future. There's a provision in there about some of the areas it's for mixed use, and there it can only be used for certain things unless the board votes otherwise. Where the open space district is a buffer zone, all such areas shall remain in their natural state unless otherwise approved by the city.
Okay. That's all I want to know is if the Planning Commission had looked at this and Mr. Carpenter calling it just a bunch of paper. Thank you.
Could I ask the applicant for a clarification on that issue? If I understand correctly, this was not anything that came before the Planning Commission, but it's the applicant's expression tonight that if in fact the zoning is approved, that the restrictions that are contained in here will be executed. Is that correct or incorrect?
That's correct. This was not part of the application. It wasn't intended to. This came as a result from negotiations that Mr. Richardson had with the neighborhood associations. And during those, there were concerns that the neighborhood associations raised, some of which you've heard tonight that I don't think some people actually understand, such as, basically we're trying to set the, zoning in such a way that there's concerns that, well, if we zone this way, what's to keep someone from coming in a year from now and trying to rezone it in another way? This would actually put the residential and put the multifamily in the multifamily and the office in the office space. And the only way that could change because of this declaration of restrictions would be by a majority vote of the property owners associations as according to their bylaws and the owners of Brody Creek, the Phase 2 project. So that way, there was a way to change it, but it wouldn't just be coming to rezone. So it was putting something sort of more in place, and it was meant to, as a compromise and to help some, reinforce the idea that this is what the developer intended to do. And he doesn't intend to sneak in the back door with a multifamily here and then come back a year later and try to get multifamily in the residential portion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cox. You might want to hang around. I see the Director Kazort just turned his microphone. Not yet. We'll call you in just a second. Didn't want you to get too far away. Director Wright. you're recognized.
Mayor, I just wanted to acknowledge all the people here from those neighborhoods. They didn't all speak, but some of them are wearing the signs, and I can tell, but there are some others that I'm not sure of. But I just wanted to acknowledge them, and they would like to stand. That's appropriate, I think, at this time, to see if you are here with these neighborhoods. I'm sure some of you have been sitting a long time. You probably want to stand. All right, that's a good stretch. You got a few more minutes.
Director Kazort, you're recognized.
Mr. Cox? Tom has pointed out some serious concerns that he found in this declaration of restrictions that I also, sitting here independently reading them. So let me just ask you your opinion of the efficacy of these restrictions if the city makes some changes in Bowman Road, and how enforceable they are, or how does that modify it, or where do you see that going?
I see that that's the reason we did have.
The engineer will short circuit
There we
this.
go.
This developer is going to make all the improvements to Bowman Road as for the part of the very first phase of the project. He's going to widen it to master street plan standards. There will be no future improvements across this property that would warrant, by the city, that would warrant any changes. So you shouldn't have put that in there.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Vice Mayor Hines, you're recognized.
Tim, I guess you shouldn't have sat down. So my big question is because, if this isn't approved tonight, what's the applicant's intention with the property? Are they going to come and present Plan B to the planning commission and file a plan to build a single family on a single family?
Wait. Vice Mayor Hines, with all respect.
Well, they presented in their application a Plan B, so I'm just asking them what their intention. Can I not ask them that?
I don't think so, because you've got an ordinance before you.
Okay.
And that's what
All right.
the issue is.
Okay.
Okay, all right, I think we've exhausted all of the questions. Does anyone else have any comments here from the board? All right, we've had the three readings of the ordinance. All in favor of the passage of the ordinance indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Roll calls requested.
Director Wright. Director Wyrick. Director Concouris.
Yeah, let's turn it on. All right, let's do that again. Let's start at the beginning.
Director Wright.
No.
Director Wyrick. No. Director Concouris. Director Fortson.
No.
Director Adcock.
No.
Director Hendricks.
Aye.
Director Richardson.
Yes.
Director Webb.
No.
Director Kazort.
No.
Vice Mayor Hines.
Yes.
4-6.
By a vote of 6-4, the ordinance has failed. Thank you all. Let's keep order. This is not popularity contests. We're just trying to do the right thing for everybody, okay? So thank you very much for all your patience and the time that both parties have put into this process. Thank you.
Mayor, could we
Is there a
take
motion
break?
to take a recess for 15
So
minutes?
moved.
We only have 2 items left.
Let's get it over. Let's do it. No recess.
Quickly.
Quickly.
All right, well, I guess there isn't a resolution. All right, we are going to go ahead and open up the public hearing on items 12 and ask for the reading of the resolution, please.
A resolution to approve the sources and uses of the projected 2017 CDBG home and HOPWA funds for inclusion in the city's annual plan and for other purposes.
For the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak for or against this resolution? Anyone who wishes to speak for or against? If not, let me go ahead and close the public hearing, and I'll recognize the motion for passage of the resolution. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. The resolution is passed. Let me go ahead and open up the public hearing for ordinance number 13 and ask for the first reading of the ordinance, please.
An ordinance to establish and lay off City of Little Rock Municipal Property Owners Multipurpose Improvement District number 2016-323 Denny Road Project to declare an emergency and for other
Do we
purposes,
suspend
first
the rules
reading.
and place on second reading?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to establish and lay off City of Little Rock Municipal Property Owners Multipurpose Improvement District Number 2016-323 to declare an emergency. Second reading.
Suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place this ordinance on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to establish and lay off City of Little Rock Municipal Property Owners Multipurpose Improvement District Number 2016-323 to declare an emergency. Third and final reading.
Is there anybody who wishes to either speak for or against this ordinance? Anyone who wishes to speak against this ordinance? Hearing none, let me go ahead and close the public hearing. Ask for a vote. All in favor of the passage of the ordinance indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, saying nay. The ordinance is passed. And on the emergency clause, all in favor of the emergency clause indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, saying nay. The emergency clause is also passed. We can now move on to citizen communication. This is an opportunity to present specific items to the board which have not been either previously on our agenda or have been expressed to us in a previous board meeting. We allow 3 minutes max for these issues, and I have 2 cards. The first one is from Omavi Shukur. Shakur?
Yes.
Did I pronounce that right? Shakur?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, my name is Omavi Shakur. I'm an attorney here in Little Rock. We're coming before you because the war on drugs, of which the city and LRPD are active participants in, has failed. Arkansas has experienced more than 1,000% increase in the number of convictions for marijuana possession since 2005, with no significant impact on marijuana drug use. People are arrested for drug offenses in Little Rock more than any other crime than theft. And over 90% of the people that are convicted of crimes here locally are considered indigent or poor. And over 80% of the people arrested for drug crimes in Little Rock are black males, even though study after study concludes that black men are no more likely to use or sell drugs than any other demographic. So it's become clear to us that the war on drugs here is not a war on drugs, but instead is a war waged against people, almost exclusively against poor people who use drugs. Arkansas has either a higher violent or property crime rate than the 5 states that have decriminalized marijuana, which means that the cat is out of the bag, right? Which means that we now know that we do not have to prosecute misdemeanor marijuana offenses in order to achieve a safer society. And so, despite this, I personally know people who have been deprived of their college education because they lost educational funding because of a misdemeanor marijuana conviction. And I know people who have lost their jobs or haven't been able to get jobs that improve the quality of lives for their family and their communities because of a misdemeanor marijuana conviction. And I know people who have anxiety every time that they see a police car because, like myself, for every 1 black man that's been arrested for marijuana possession, there are dozens, if not hundreds of black men that have, I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on. But there are dozens, if not hundreds of black men that have been stopped and searched to no avail, that are innocent. And to what end? To what end do we deprive people of the opportunities to avail themselves of these scarce opportunities? No end at all. And so we're coming to you before you today because as taxpayers, parents, lawyers, doctors, we want you to pass an ordinance that establishes the prosecution and investigation of marijuana as the lowest law enforcement priority in the city. Fayetteville has this, Eureka Springs has this, the people of Little Rock are just as deserving of this to change our ineffective, inequitable, and invasive marijuana policy in Little Rock. So I have copies of the ordinance, and we're hoping that you can bring it forth on the regular meeting next month. Thank you. Please let us know how we can help towards this end as well.
Director Hendricks, you're recognized, please.
Thank you. Give me your name again.
Omavi Shakur.
I was about to ask you before you said that you had an ordinance.
Yes.
So will I be working, or any of the other board members be working with you to look at what you have? I see you're passing it out, but I mean actually a meeting.
Certainly. I've already talked to a couple of the directors about this, and I'm more than willing to give out my contact information to
Okay,
any
and
of them.
I would encourage the board members to really be serious, and I would like to meet with you all at Sue Collins Williams Library so that we can you just not hand this out to us and it'll end right there, because I know things like that happen up here,
Yes.
okay?
Well, we have we will follow up this time next month, and so we're hoping to see it on the agenda.
I know Dr. Whit be a person, so I'll talk to her to set a meeting.
All right, thank you.
Director Richardson, you're recognized, please.
Yes, Marvy, thank you for your work on behalf of poor people in terms of representation, advocacy, and thank you for your comments, and thank you for sharing this ordinance with us. And I think we need to make sure that this is a clear distinction between legalizing marijuana and lowering the priority in terms of how we enforce marijuana laws and how we enforce our policing, and recognizing and acknowledging the fact that having marijuana investigation, prosecution, and or enforcement really has a deleterious effect on our prison population, which in fact has a bigger effect on budgets and resources that we commit to fighting crime and public safety. And I think it leads to sometimes an overcrowding of our jail space, and sometimes that leads to a call or acknowledgement for sales tax increases to deal with that burden. So we need to make sure that people hear this correctly. You're not talking about legalizing it. You're talking about, and you're not talking about decriminalizing. You're just talking about lowering it in terms of our priority, Bruce, for enforcement or targeting, and how we prioritize the enforcement of this. Am I correct? Do I understand that?
It doesn't tie the hands of law enforcement or prosecutors at all. Yes.
Well, thank you, Marvin. Thank you certainly for your work on behalf of poor people and advocacy on behalf of poor people. And thank you for getting this information to us tonight.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
Director Wright, you're recognized, please.
Mr. Moore, well, I guess Mr. Carpenter first. So there is nothing to prohibit us as a board from passing such an ordinance as this?
Yes, there is. That's an initiated ordinance in Fayetteville that was brought forward by the people and voted in. It's a clear violation of the separation of powers, because you're going to be telling the judicial and the police what to do in a legislative matter. And you're going to be having an ordinance in place that essentially says to your police officers, don't enforce an offense. And that's a dangerous road to go down.
If I may respond to that.
Wait a minute.
Well, before we get into the legal argument about the executive branch execution of ordinances and state statutes and the legislative branch trying to direct that, which is what I think Mr. Carpenter is suggesting the conflict might be, we probably need to let that extended discussion go on as it relates to whether or not there's an ordinance or not. I mean, we can get into an argument about that, and we lawyers can argue about this till midnight.
Well, that was going to be my
probably don't
point.
want us to do.
Yes, and I will say I'm an attorney, licensed attorney as well, and I have an ethical obligation not to present anything that I would advocate for any illegal.
Well, that was the first part of my question. And so as our legal counsel, you saying there is some problems with this?
If you'll note on the ordinance that was passed out at the bottom, there's a note there from the city attorney of Fayetteville that notes it was an initiated act and that he had very serious legal issues about the legality of the ordinance.
Okay. My second point is, I know what happens nationally as far as statistics are concerned, and I've heard this argument, and I would like to know if we have any data, Mr. Moore, as to the number of calls or arrests that we make on simply marijuana offenses. If we have some real data to put with this, then I can better see where we're going with this. But if our legal counsel is saying this can't be done, that's going to probably kill this.
Well, I'm saying that this ordinance has problems.
Can you draft one that doesn't?
I wouldn't put him on the spot on that
Hey,
right now, okay?
But Mr. Moore, can you get me that data? And Mr. Carpenter, can you analyze this and give a critique you know how you do, and you go line by line or however you have to do it, but, and I'm sure you have a staff person that could make this clear. And because I don't want to see us not going after more serious offenses, and the burglaries and things like that in some of the poor areas, and the car break-ins and things like that, that I would prefer us to be focused on. Thank you.
And thank you, Mavi, for bringing this to our attention. The issue is misdemeanor marijuana arrests, and so I think that there's some easy data that can be calculated to determine whether or not that's a low priority or high priority existing within the police department. So, and then to take that one place or another depending on that discussion. And I would, if a board member wishes to advance this, then Mr. Carpenter, clearly you need to get with Mr. Shakur and see if you can resolve the legal issues that have been identified. Thank you very much. And thanks to all of you for hanging around for the board meeting. All right, we have one other citizen communication card from Philip Bryant. He's left. Okay. I don't have a card from anyone else. Mr. Jackson, did you want to have a citizen communication with us? Well, I don't have any other cards.
I just want to say one thing really quick. We came to you all back in May.
Who's we?
We, the East Little Rock Neighborhood Association.
Okay,
I'm
thank
Ronnie
you.
Jackson. And we want to thank you all because we asked you all to do something about our kids during that time period, and you did. You came up with a pilot program that worked well for our kids, and I just want to say thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. We appreciate that. Director Hendricks, did you have something?
No, I don't.
Motion. There's a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, saying nay. We're in adjournment. Thank you.